Yeah.
24 hours of peace, peace, love, unity, safely having fun. Real hip hop for the people. It's an engagement. It's a demonstration. Using hip hop culture to get you activated. Let the people hear the bass, the vibration, the love, peace, unity, and watch them add on. It's a culture. It's not just rapping. It's not what we do. It's how we do it. We're doing it right here, Springfield Avenue, between Bergen and Plum. 24 hours straight, man. It's crazy.
Shit. We the people. The people of the culture.
Yeah, Ron Lawrence.
Fire. The hip hop culture.
Yo, we love rap.
That's
Love
what
it.
we do.
Yeah, we do. But it's really about the culture.
Yeah, let them know how.
The culture.
Yeah. What up, man?
You know a hard head makes a soft behind. If I only knew my schoolwork like I knew them rhymes. Mom upside my head, I'm trying to memorize every line. High power rap and breaks, super rhymes. Deep into the culture, didn't even know it. Young entrepreneurs spitting bars like a poet in a rush to be mature behind bars when we blow it. In the bold ass rappers too immature to outgrow it. It was more than just music, something next to breathing. I get giddy like a baby trying to spit while I'm feeding. The mic I be squeezing, dropping facts like I'm teaching. Leaking flows for the perfect beat seeking. Mama used to say, take your time, young man. But I'm trying to feel a light so you can see when I tan. I'm like one I never ran, I'm a fan but never stand. Just take it blackwood to the east, X and out the clan.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Pueblo Unido, grassroots Steve Biko. Rule number one, never forget the people. I live that, I give back. Heart all in it, no gimmicks, straight facts. From the start, I'm the light from the dark. Born from black art, knew my part. Daddy gave me, mama made me. North raised me, hip hop saved me. For the culture now, for the black and brown. Harriet Underground, sun up to sundown. Till my people get out, north to down south, spread like word of mouth. While you cowards is hooded, we battle the bullet. Black lives to the fullest. Out here to the end, stronger together, that's the day we win.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
Yeah. But no one stopped to think about the people.
The legends before me are ones I want to get it like, but hitting quick hit different when hitting right. Mob ties, this thing of ours is birthrights. Who's next for the culture and them searchlights? Do it to it, this music, I'm trying to talk through it. Every plan on my own, I watch the lie do it. Airborne to Skiki, like a Wendell Pruitt. Trumpets blow, this song's here, melodic ruins. Think forward before they have to think form. Boom bap, I talk that and live enormous. Informers when present in your boy performing, especially when them drums snap by Brian Lawrence. Do it all, that poet talker, the line crosser. Many hawk and I speak by and flying saucers. Make it worth it, I can't take no feeble offers. Signed, sealed, and delivered, and you know the offer.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are.
But no one stopped to think about the people.
Holy integrated, having omnipresent, we are. The people.
What up? It's your boy Hakim Green, Channel Live and Direct, representing for the Hakim Green Show. That was Real Hip Hop for the People, produced by Ron Lawrence, featuring Do It All Kelly, Mitty Baraka, G. Simone. It's an event we do every year in the great city of Newark, New Jersey, called 24 Hours of Peace, as you can see right behind me right here. This year's event is happening September 5th and 6th from 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Saturday, straight through. We have a ton of artists coming through to support the push for peace in our community. Got G-Dep, Cool G Rap, Allure. We got Jacquees, Donnell Jones, Jadakiss, Scarlett, The Baby, Lil Taj and Friends, Zeddy Will, and the Group 41. Also, big shout out to DJ Little Man, DJ Qua, my partner in the whole endeavor, the Amiri Baraka, Jr., Chief of Staff for the Honorable Mayor Raz Baraka. Big shout out to the city. Big shout out to Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery. Big shout out to the Brick City Peace Collective. All the different folks involved in putting on 24 Hours of Peace. It's always a phenomenal event. We've been doing every year since 2010. And be on the lookout for, streaming live on September 5th and 6th. That's what we're doing. Now, the Hakim Green Show, something new, been flipping and bouncing a couple different platforms, Madism TV, Madism Sports, OSNSR. Big shout out to everybody involved in those projects. But I've been pushed to do something a little bit different, focused on me, myself, and I. Big shout out to De La Soul. This is the Hakim Green Show, where we're going to bring in just thoughtful, intelligent, knowledgeable folks, grounded individuals. It's not a debate platform. We're not trying to do a lot of arguing and all that. Even though we got to check somebody, we will check somebody. Big shout out to Ramageddon. I see you, son. If we got to check somebody, we will check somebody, but that's not why this has been created. This is about real dialogue. This is about, understanding, getting to the root of things, having respectful discourse. With that said, our first guest for the Hakim Green Show is somebody who's been following me on Facebook for a long time now, usually always on the right side of the conversation. Mr. Jeffrey McCambridge, peace, salute to you, my friend.
Peace. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Big fan of usually being on the right side of things.
Yeah.
If you got to land somewhere, it's where you want to land, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. But understanding what the right side of things is and where that lands can be difficult at times. You gotta get filtered through the BS, the bullshit. You know what I mean? There's a lot of bullshit out there, in all different facets and forms, on every different level, in all avenues. You're gonna come face with the bullshit. But as you weed through it, I see you have a nice collection of material behind you that I'm sure has helped you find your way through the bullshit.
Yeah.
Very extensive library.
It's always nice to be in a little bit of a library. I'd rather be lost in a book than in the bullshit.
Word is bond. Word is bond.
They're not always separate, but the more you read, the more you can tell them apart.
Absolutely. So, where are you from, Jeff?
I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Moved around a lot as a kid, lived in Minnesota for a little bit, Twin Cities. We moved back to Michigan. I was in Indianapolis for a few years. And then I came out here to Ohio to get my PhD. And then I've got another upcoming move headed down south to the South Carolina. We just got a new teaching job down there. So
congratulations. All right. So did you receive that doctorate? You said you moved to Ohio to get it. So you received it. And your doctorate is in what discipline?
Literary history.
Right.
So anytime I can take a conversation and shift it to history, I usually will, because there's a lot of signposts.
So you saying all the right things already. One, the great Malcolm X would always say, history is best suited to reward all research.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is that?
Yeah.
And then you said signposts, which, I've kind of grown into the habit of saying, as adults, we should be signpost to young people, right? We shouldn't necessarily dictate what they should do. We should just give direction. You want to add on to that?
One of those things, like, the more you fumble on your own, the more it helps to say, like, this person provided a guidance. And, even if I didn't follow it, I've seen the example. I know what the fallout looks like. I know what the recovery looks like, right? Because you can't always get young people to listen to you. Rule number one of teaching, right, is you can give the knowledge. What they do with it is up to them.
Right. So like that you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
You can't make them drink, but you can show them why water is important. while you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that point, give the horse some agency. Let them decide if they want to drink once they know what to do with the water.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you had got your doctorate in literary history from the University of
Ohio.
Ohio.
Ohio University.
Ohio University. All right, man, you got to get it right. Ohio University, that's the Buckeyes, right?
No, they're up in Columbus. I'm down in Athens.
Okay, so what's the difference between those Ohio schools? You got Ohio State, University of Ohio. Fill in the blanks for me.
Ohio State is a lot better with sports.
Got you.
Bigger school, better teams.
Uh-huh.
They also have a really nice library. I spent a lot of time ordering books from them to come out here.
Uh-huh. Where'd you get your undergrad?
I got my bachelor's and my master's at Indiana University in Indianapolis.
Wow. Yeah. Now, when we do our little discourse on Facebook, like I said, you're usually on the right side of the conversation. You coming from the Midwest, especially, Indiana isn't the most liberal of places statewide.
No.
Right. But, you seem to be very progressive in your conversation. Why do you think that is? And what kind of shaped your way of thinking?
I would attribute a lot of it to two things. I would say, number one, I was raised with a sense of fairness for everybody, right? Like, it feels wrong for me when things are unfair. And that's largely rooted in a personal conviction that society should be based around a shared concept of justice. Right, that justice is something that should be universal. It shouldn't be, some people get this version, some people get that version, but that justice is when you do right by, if not everybody, at least the largest number of people possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, that Cold War fallout where it's a little weird to be like, okay, you do have to share. You're raised with these essentially socialist principles that cooperative economics, if you're little kids, you got one friend and you've got two toys, each of you gets a toy, right? You spread it around so that everyone's working with the same base material. Everyone's got the same material conditions. And then you keep building from there as everyone's life improves more and more incrementally. And standing on those convictions usually, I think, helps me land where I land politically.
Mm-hmm. Now, would you say you got that from your parents directly, or was it your direct and external family, aunts, uncles? Is your family because that's, like I said, it's the Midwest, it's America, point, right off top. America, white America, Midwest. It's hard, there's a lot of pressures going on to have a certain philosophy and ideology in life.
Yeah, I think it helped being kind of divorced from the worst impulses that people can have, right? Like, I didn't necessarily grow up with a lot of people who were what we might today call hateful.
Okay.
Or when I was a kid in Michigan, this is before Michigan went hard for Trump. Right, grew up, my dad's side of the family, auto workers union, nurses union, grow up with that kind of blue collar union, everyone kind of in it. We're all on the same assembly line. We're all trying to do the same thing kind of mentality. I think that helps a lot in terms of understanding empathy outside of the family unit, or understanding how community just becomes a larger metaphor that the same things that family is supposed to be built on, and you just keep extrapolating that out and further, that, and then understanding that fundamentally the things that divide us as people are mostly socially invented. Right? racism is illogical. Like, it doesn't make sense. And once you frame it that way, it's like the whole idea of kind of pitting people against each other competitively doesn't make sense, but having people work cooperatively does.
Right. So are you familiar with the song You Must Learn by KRS-One?
Yeah.
Right. So that was the first time I had heard who created racism, like the dominant individuals, J.A. Goldenar, H.S. Chamberlain, and other individuals in, I guess there would be the 15th, 16th, 17th century, like you said, creating up this really illogical way of categorizing humans into racial categories to divide and then to conquer them. And when I hear the discourse around race and who's a racist, and Black people can be racist too, and reverse racism, and then I'm like, well, if you understand where race, the concept of race comes from, and then what racism is used for structurally, you understand that those are all. So just, is build on that.
Yeah, I think one important distinction to make, since you're talking about structures, is like racism, which is structurally bound, and then something like prejudice, which might be a little bit more individual. But in terms of the history of racism, like, I don't know where it started, right? Like, as a historian of things like race, you can start in places like the Greeks supposedly coining the term barbarian as like an anti-Germanic thing, because they were saying their language just sounds like them saying like bar, 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 bar.
Right.
And they're saying this group of people is fundamentally different and fundamentally inferior. And then the more you dehumanize, the more you can legitimize or rationalize the process of invasion, colonization, displacement, all that sort of stuff. Edward Said wrote a book, I think it was 77, 78, called Orientalism. And this is essentially a history of like anti-Islamic prejudice, but it is really good in terms of revolutionizing the way we conceive of race. And it's, in terms of the academy, it's the foundation stone for how we understand how the metropole, or like whatever kind of dominant imperial culture, conceptualizes themselves based on the other. Right. So he talks a lot about Christianity and Islam, and how like Christianity, especially as a European phenomena, as it moves out, right, out from the Roman Empire, kind of migrates up through France, England, Spain, right, becomes a very European thing. There is no cohesive sense of identity here. And you don't really get a sense of either European or Christian identity really until we start moving into the Crusades. When you take what considers itself a dominant power, it looks at what it sees as an antagonistic force, and it says, all right, I don't like you, so I'm going to project all of these things that I don't like onto you. And then as long as I know you're like an abject evil, and I'm the opposite of you, now I've defined myself. If I look at this other group and I say you're miserly, you're lazy, you're licentious, you're boisterous, now all of a sudden I'm pious, I'm meek, I'm charitable, right? And you start constructing these binaries. Which go back to Malcolm X, he's got that whole chapter called Satan, where he's talking about reading the encyclopedia. You say, I'm looking up the word black, I'm looking up the word white, I'm understanding that these words have meaning beyond description. They imply purity or corruption, right? Once you start applying those terms to people, now you can legitimize something like, in the case of the book Orientalism, you talk about, you've got a couple centuries of defining Christians as wholly good, Muslims as wholly bad. Then you move away from the term Muslim because that doesn't even enter most European lexicons until like the 1700s anyway, right? You get deep into colonialism where you have to actually meet people. And then your definitions start to fall apart because you've been misusing the words all along. But as long as the foundation for identity is going to be this fantasy of purity as opposed to your enemies, then of course that house of cards will come tumbling down. It's why it's so easy to kind of confuse a racist. You're talking to them and it's like everything they say is just made up, right? It's all stereotypes. There's no basis in reality for it. And it's because they're chirping these talking points that have been around for over 1,000 years. And they get debunked over and over again, but people are clutching at it because it's all they have. Amin Malouf, I think he was a Lebanese Christian who lived in Paris. He wrote a book called...
Say that name again?
Amin Malouf.
Okay.
Maalouf. He wrote a book called Identity. It's real short. I think it's maybe like 100 pages. And it's just a theory text on the origin of violence. And in there he says, as long as your identity isn't denying who you are, you're not likely to fall back on violence. You're not likely to get very defensive when your identity is attacked.
Yeah, absolutely.
What ends up happening is kind of naturally, as we're trying to fit in into society, we start eliminating those things that we are, right? So he's saying the healthiest person, you can't even catalog your identity. You're millions of things, husband, father, wife, mother, brother, sister, teacher, poet, like everything that you are, it's this endless list. You start listing things so long, you list them twice, you forget stuff, because who you are is endless, it's infinite. It's once you reduce yourself down to, I'm white, I'm Catholic, I'm this, I'm that. Now, because you're only 1, 2, maybe 5 things, you always feel like you're threatened. And that's why people don't stop and think. It's all fight or flight.
Yeah.
Once you get to that point.
So those names that I mentioned before, J.A. Goldbernard, H.S. Chamberlain, and I'm trying to memorize the song. There's one more name. Johann F. Blumenbach, a German, came out of nowhere and started confirming white supremacy of men of colors. For this time, all men were brothers. It was Johann who went on to say there are 5 different colors in the world today. That's Malaysian, Malayan, and Mongolian, American, Indian, and Ethiopian. Yet the ignorance gets scarier. He believes whites were superior. According to his idiotic fountain, the purest whites were from the Caucasus Mountains. J.A. Goldbernard and H.S. Chamberlain both supported this outrageous racism. This is, and then he goes on. But those are the creators of scientific racism. So unscientifically scientific, categorizing the races of man into, boxes that really don't fit, or we don't fit into it. And it's a way of dividing race into a caste system with white people always at the top. So you have, because nobody's, you're not white, I'm not black, right? So we have these colors as tribal, tribalism, I think, is what you were referring to earlier, where everybody has this definition of who they are and they coalesce among like-minded people, so to speak. That becomes your tribe. And then they use these tribalistic, because, they say the white people didn't exist before the 1700s because they needed, poor whites to go along with the system. And if poor whites could be always better than black people, no matter what, then they would keep the system going. And yeah. I
mean, like one of the easiest ways to diffuse that bomb, right? Because people get attached to this idea of like whiteness, which it's a monolith. It means nothing. If whiteness existed, why were the Italians and the Irish persecuted? Right? They were able to blend in because whiteness is getting manufactured as it goes. But when they came over, they weren't considered white, right? When I say came over, I mean specifically over here. And there's a whole lot to unpack in terms of like quota systems in terms for immigration, right? Like the idea of manufacturing a cultural identity based on who you allow in or not builds into this idea of who is and isn't allowed to be white, right? And then you get into the mythic histories of like, this is an Anglo-Saxon nation or something like that, which doesn't make sense because historically there was no group of people called Anglo-Saxons, right? Those are separate groups that historians have pushed together.
Yeah.
And even at that, like you look at the history of Britain, you've got Celts who get displaced by Saxons, who get displaced by Angles, who get displaced by Danes. At some point, we have to just acknowledge that we're making distinctions based on the language that someone spoke and not something biological.
Yeah.
Right. That like most of our terms that we conflate with like race or this idea of ethnicity, it's not biological, it's lingual. And like, yeah, of course that separates us. The language we use shapes reality that as we perceive it, right? There are emotions that exist in some languages and not in others, right? And that means the human experience isn't entirely universal. But I want to back up a little bit.
Okay.
You use this phrasing about white people on top. And there's actually pictorial representations of this. So if you look at maps before the 1500s, East is at the top. Even European maps. And so you've got Asia up here, then you've got Europe and Africa.
Wow.
Equal at the bottom. And this gets really interesting when you look at some where like some of the more artistic representations where you've got like Christ in the back and he's smiling up here like hugging Asia while Europe and Africa are at his feet. What happens in the 1500s, in addition to things like the manufacture of colonialism through like the East India Company or these other attempts to kind of like go out and extract resources and bring them back, right? The fascination with the New World and all that it would offer, that these resources and slaves that could be extracted and all these other kind of plans that monarchs and nobles had, that some of which fell through, some didn't. What happens is a man named Ortelius makes an atlas. Fantastic book. Detailed maps of the entire world, mostly based on other maps. It's not like he traveled and wrote all this stuff down. But what he does is he takes the planet and he turns it. So we've got Europe in the north, specifically what we call Western Europe. Right, we've got, France, Spain, and what this does is it shrinks Europe, sure, but it also distorts Africa and Asia. Right, one of those things that comes up all the time is like Africa's way bigger than it is on the map, because once you take a globe, you pull it out, you get the center contracting and the outer parts expanding, because globes don't flatten, right? You can't just flatten a map. Like you can't make.
Wait. Hold on one second. Hold on.
Yeah.
Flat Earth. What are you talking about? Jokes. Whole other conversation. Don't need to worry about that. Keep going.
No, we're good. One of the things, so maps are always representational. They're always a metaphor for something else, right? And because of that, they're always ideologically charged. Someone is making a decision about what this map tells you, right? Whether that's which cities are on the map, which roads are on the map, which waterways are on the map. No map is 100% accurate. And you don't want a 100% accurate map, because that would be the worst map you can have, right? It's one of the paradoxes of maps.
Why do you say that?
As you shrink things, you have to eliminate details. You eliminate nuance, right? So the best map would have to be life size, because that's the only way you can capture all the detail. And either that or you make it bigger. And at that point, you're also distorting because you're expanding. But like a real size, life-size map is the worst map you can have because it's completely impractical. Right. So even the most benign map is making that decision of, is this city, is this town important enough to be listed here? Oh, you're muted.
No. I'm sorry. I'm trying to talk to my wife. I'm listening.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm multitasking. You know, we're getting ready for this year's 24 Hours Apiece. So we're in the middle of production. I'm doing this interview. So I'm handling things, but I'm on point.
Right. I got you. So one of the quiet things that maps communicate, of course, is we've got north at the top. We always think of top as being best. It's the highest part. And when you switch so that Europe is now the top, especially what we would consider the most white Christian kind of parts of Europe, that not only is put at the top, it also becomes normalized. This is the normal part of the map. Everything else has some sort of adjective that describes it. Right? It's now known in relation to the normal thing. Right? So like in terms that are a little bit more local, are you an American or are you an African American? Right? Are you an Asian American? Are you a qualified American or are you the real thing?
Well, you know, because you went to American when you first described the map in Europe and Europe being in a certain location and everything relative. Now everything becomes relative to that thing. I was thinking Middle East and how we have this term called the Middle East, which is really fugazi because it's only Middle East in between Europe and the Far East, which is where spices and other things to be traded came from. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So like we've got terms like Near East, Middle East, Far East. So like, what is this in the middle of? Right, is the question. Because now you're talking about you've got a center and a periphery. Center's Europe, the periphery's Asia. Now we've got this part that's the middle. It's not even the East anymore, right? It's a further kind of subdivision, which
well, it's Middle East of what? You know, it's like, you know, when I want to say this as politically as correct as possible, but when a group of people want to claim their stake in terms of civilization, the center of all things, you know, so you have, you know, at one time, Kemet, aka Egypt, was the center of all things. Then at some point you get, you know, Greece and Rome become the center of, and you get the Byzantine Empire becomes and they actually take over Rome, and then you get Western Roman Empire, Eastern European Empire, and then the Western European Empire becomes what we call Europe as a continent, which in actuality is not even a continent. It's not truly a continent, not the way they teach. What a continent is a large landmass surrounded by water on all four sides. Europe connects to Asia by way of one of those mountain ranges, right?
Yeah. So like, if one of the problems you run into, right, is like, what do you do with what we used to call Eurasia, right? The stand country, right? Or like Russia, because half of Russia is in Asia, right? There's so you use the phrase the way they teach, right? One of the things that's always difficult is like, how do you make the distinction between like what I learned that's worth keeping and what do I need to deprogram or reprogram if we want to go into some Channel Live lyrics, right? How do I first off, how do I make the distinction, right? How do I learn kind of like what was taught to me because it's traditional, what was the propaganda that I was taught, and then like what is the thing that's maybe more accurate, which is tough to do. But like one of the kind of core questions is like, think back to when you were learning like history. What is the birthplace of civilization? Not that you've learned since school, But what did you learn in school?
Greece and Rome.
Yeah. And, you learn about the Greeks and it's like, okay, well, who were the Greeks copying?
Well, the thing is, in the history, they tell you, but so my first, conflict in school around what I was learning was with Miss Talega, my fourth grade teacher. And the conversation was Columbus. And in the story, it says that there were these people there. You're reading the story, and there's these people there, and Columbus gets there, and he discovered. I'm like, wait a minute. I raised my hand. This is fourth grade. And I'm like, but Miss Talega, he couldn't have discovered America.
Yeah.
He discovered America, but I'm reading right here, and it says that there were people there. Who are those people?
Mm-hmm.
She shut me down. Conversation changed. Let's keep it moving. And that's kind of how, for the thinkers in the room, as we're going through our experience and we're challenged by the professor or the teacher or the expert in the matter, you find yourself getting beaten down because you know the truth, but your truth is not confirmed for you. Like, you need confirmation of the truth, especially when you're faced with the truth. So, in the sense of like Europe being a continent, it's not. It's Eurasia accounts for the entire landmass, not just this piece that's been defined now by who runs shit, who's the power in the world. And that's how we're going to define it. So yeah, that's my little spiel.
Yeah. And like one of the questions is like the deconstruction of the word history. Right. So you've got like capital H history, which is like the history of empires, history of states and politics. You've got something like lowercase history, which might be something like domestic histories, might be like, what did you do today? What did I do today? What is daily life within the empire or the people whose neck is being crushed by it, right? Mm-hmm. Those domestic stories tend to get lost. Mm-hmm. And then you've got this kind of like ecological history of like, what is the ground under our feet doing? Because it's, what are the things that are indifferent to us, but that we might shape or change based on our actions? Because like the continents don't care what empire's controlling it or what they've named it, right? Like, we have a similar kind of parallel with like national boundaries in Africa. Those are not tribal, those are not lingual, those are colonial.
Colonial, yeah.
Right. And just to go back to a phrase that you used earlier in terms of like divide and conquer, some of those were strategically drawn to put people into territorial conflicts because that's how you get people to police their own actions and each other's actions while you extract their resources.
All right, so you got to break that down. Can you give me some details and specifics? Because that was deep right there.
All right, so a lot of what end up being billed as like ethnic conflicts, right? These things that paint Africa monolithically as just a brutal, violent place, which buys into all of those racist narratives that we're raised with as Americans, right? We're born into that already existing. You look at the colonial legacy that takes groups that had either minimal or almost no conflicts for generations, centuries, and you add a colonial power that sometimes favors one, sometimes favors the other. They make life really difficult for one group while making it just kind of difficult for the other. You create a power imbalance that then puts people against each other. All the while, you're degrading their material conditions, you're making them desperate. The more desperate people are, they don't fight against you. You take whatever it is that they have that you want, whether it be gold, whether it be diamonds, whether it be oil, whether it even be beachfront property, right? Which is ultimately what it comes to when you keep peeling it back. You say, okay, well, why is this a problem? all right, why is this a problem? Why is this a problem? There's only so many things you can point the finger at. Once you boil it down to its most reduced kind of elements, you get things like racism and capitalism. And capitalism is just marketing racism as another means of extracting wealth and controlling other people, right? So at that point, what's the solution? Things like class solidarity, cooperative economics, building together to improve everyone's material conditions while deprogramming that knee-jerk impulse that some people are just born better.
Mm-hmm. So what you just aptly described pushes back against, what's this fool's name running around on different platforms saying that black people sold each other into slavery, and only 2% of white people own slaves. So how can you blame the entire white race? Not that it's about blaming the entire white race. It's about describing the functions of not only the government, but this economic system that leveraged itself off of slavery. So, yeah, you did a great job. Thank you, sir.
So to build on that point real quick, we talked a little bit about different types of histories, right? You have like the traditional or the accepted history. You can call it the imperial history. It's whatever we're raised with, whether that be formal or informal education, right? Because honestly, we learn a lot from music. We learn a lot from TV. Our education isn't limited to the classroom.
Yes.
There's a reason that allegedly the US military pays Marvel a lot of money to look real good in the superhero films, right? Wow. That like there are, extra branches, right? We'll just put it that way. That it's not necessarily that all media is bad or even that a compromised media doesn't have value. It's just important to recognize those kinds of connections.
Well, hold on one second. Hold on. Very superficial, but very deep at the same time. The military pays Marvel a budget to make them look good. Make sure you don't shit on me in these grandiose, it's hero worship at its finest. Mm-hmm. Marvel comic book heroes are gods and goddesses. They capture the subconscious imagination and they get you to buy into some shit because it looked good on the screen.
Right.
Oh, you gotta break that down a little bit more for me, please.
I mean, like, there are a few very good recruiting mechanisms for the military. You've got things like people's material conditions, the promise of education, if you served in the military, no matter what happens, you always have a job at the post office, right? There's security in that. You get preferential treatment, you get discounts and things. Cool, great. So that's always a big recruitment tool, right? It's just saying, hey, look, life's expensive. Oh, did inflation hit you kind of hard? Is it too expensive to feed yourself? Are your parents struggling and you don't want to burden them as soon as you turn 18? Yeah, guaranteed job. You just sign up for 2 years. So that's always a powerful recruitment tool. The other one is, how many war movies have you watched that just got you really feeling good?
Yeah.
Get your blood pumping.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or video games. That's not to say that like music or games control your mind. Like we're not going to go down the
I will
thing again.
Because as an entertainer, mm-hmm. word entertainment means control your mind. Mm-hmm. You take the Latin roots, and it's like it literally means to control your mind. That's what entertainment is. So if that's what it is, that's what it is. It's like, okay, it's a conspiracy theory, deep dark. You don't want to go down a rabbit hole and have that old conversation. But just on a base level, what does the word mean? Oh, then that's what it is. It's mind control. And when we say things like, Marvel pays so and so to do so and so, you know what I mean? It's like, oh man, because they understand the power of capturing your imagination, and you getting that adrenaline rush when, you know what I mean, when Thanos, you know what I mean, and he's like, oh, yeah, you just, and you pick sides, and these, Captain America, it's just those images. So that's just a powerful thing to say in the way you described it earlier. To me, was like so on point. There we are. The wife and I watched this series called The Boys. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah, The Boys is something else. And it's like, man, you're looking at, present day political scene happening right in front of your face. And it's presented as a group of superheroes, but then you go behind the screen, what's really going on, and it's a lot of corruption, filth flying filth. It's just ridiculous. And it's like, wow, they're really telling us in real time. It's not like we're going to set this in the past or we're going to put it in the future and let you catch up to it. We're going to show you in real time. Yeah. What's going on. So, yeah.
One thing, think about how scary life was under the Patriot Act. Early 2000s, the government tells you they're spying on you, right? Openly. And they say, we're going to do it to keep you safe. We're in your phone. We're in the masjids. We're collecting data on everybody. You have to go through extra security at the airport. Not because you're a criminal, because someone somewhere is a criminal. And we need to catch them before they do the crime. And you can now be guilty of a crime before you do it. Right? That was the Patriot Act. And that was free.
Minority Report. What's the thought crime? That was Minority Report, right? You could be guilty before you do it.
And think about how many military movies came out 2003 to 2008, where America's always the good guy, and even when we're not, the soldier on the ground is. And even if there is a systemic problem, they're good. They're always good. We only fight bad guys. Right. Even if there is no one paying for that from the military, it just serves as free advertising for them at that point. Yeah. And that then informs how we think about not the military itself, because I don't want to get caught up on that, but how our military treats people abroad.
Right. Well, I mean, we see it's all propaganda. Marketing and advertising are just commercial terms for propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And they're always selling you something. The American dream is something that's being sold to you constantly, so you buy into it. But the it's a full court press all the time. So it's I don't want to get make it mystified or make it so conspiratorial, But it's when you look at what it is. Again, it is what it is, and using history to inform how you see right now. For instance, I like to call it the through line. If you look at the through line through history, you see who's on whose side, right? So history informing everything that we're talking about right now. Roy Cohn, what you know about Roy Cohn?
Roy Cohn. Bring me up to speed.
McCarthy era. He was McCarthy's general counsel. There's a whole strategy in pointing the finger at people, blaming people, calling people out, and that was mastered by Joe McCarthy. They say under the tutelage of Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn would later become general counsel for a lot of the mafia bosses in the 60s, 70s, 80s. He was very close to Nixon. And he's responsible for introducing Roger Stone to Trump, I believe.
Oh, good. That's a nice through line.
That's a nice through line, right? So, when we talk about the McCarthy era, what do you know about that horrific chapter of American history?
One of the reasons that I specialized in European history and literature is that the American stuff is just too dark, right? You start with American literature with James Fenimore Cooper, which is some of the most racist anti-Indian stereotypes you've ever heard. And then it doesn't improve, right? Mentioned Malcolm X a few times, right? He also said, I don't see an American dream.
Mm-hmm.
You know what he did see was the American nightmare.
Yeah.
Because what he's doing, just to draw from Wizard of Oz, like he's pulling back the curtain and he's saying, oh, no, we can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm going to break it down into the simplest terms that I can and feed it back to you so that we're all on the same page. Right. He's a fantastic orator, fantastic writer. Because he does all of the teaching moves. He takes the information and presents it to you in a way that'll leave the least amount of people behind, while still challenging the person up ahead. Right. It's a brilliant way to speak. But like in terms of McCarthyism, blacklisting, we've got a lot of people who went just plain out disappeared. And this isn't even the first time. Like we go back further, we've got Sacco and Vanzetti, right? Where we've got your politics, in their case, determine whether you live or die. But
all right, you got to educate me. You said who?
Sacco and Vanzetti. They were some Italian immigrants who were anarchists. They were convicted of a murder and executed on what has been historically shaky evidence. And it's one of those things where, like, even if they were guilty, it didn't matter. That's not what they were arrested for. That's not what they were executed for. They were executed for their politics. And maybe they were, maybe they weren't guilty, right? Like, people can debate that. When it comes to McCarthyism, we have a very early form of what we're seeing today with ICE and other groups, right? Like, what we're seeing today isn't new, it isn't different, except for the fact that, like, they've taken the decorations off the sides. It's just more honest at this point. It's more open. That's the big difference, right? It's not clever rhetoric. It's not being disguised as, like, this is for your safety. There were some attempts at that, like they're eating the dogs and the cats. All right.
Yep.
They paid lip service to the old talking points, but for the most part, it's just control. It's racism, reactionaryism, whatever isms we want to throw at it. It's just not as clever as it used to be. It's still there. We've seen it before. We go back, like I said, the Patriot Act. We go back to McCarthyism. It's all just targeting different groups. Same thing, targeting different groups. This isn't even the first time we've used prisons outside of U.S. territory to house people. Right?
Really?
We already settled the constitutionality of that back with Obama.
Guantanamo Bay?
Yeah. That, like, you're off U.S. soil, you're not protected. Because the Constitution protects you when you're under American jurisdiction. But we can send you to Cuba, we can send you to El Salvador, and now you're under the rules of the prison, not the Constitution. Right? So we've been struggling with due process for a while. That's not new. Same thing with McCarthyism.
Yeah. So just for those who, better description of what we're talking about, what McCarthyism was in the late 40s, you had a Senator Joseph McCarthy who was very abrasive towards anybody considered a communist, a liberal, a progressive, a socialist, gay. He was responsible for targeting, tons of black folks. Jews got targeted during this time. His general counsel was a man by the name of Roy Cohn, who was very influential in New York politics, especially, but national politics. As an attorney, he was known as a fixer. He was very close to Donald Trump up until Roy Cohn's death. He introduced Donald Trump to Roger Stone, and that's why Roger Stone was so close to Trump. We saw him during the first run, prominent in Trump's ascension to the presidency. Roger Stone has a tattoo of Nixon on his back. So it's just a through line from that time to this time. You see a lot of the same characters or connected characters. You know, same tricks, same strategies, accusation, you're a socialist, you're a communist, you're this, you're that, you know, targeting the gay and lesbian community, targeting black people. That's nonstop all the time. We know what that's about. But it's like, it's full speed ahead with them. And, you know, they're, I think, trying to take democracy away from us. Not that black people ever had it, really.
And that's the rub, right? Like, how many times have you been told you have to vote a certain way to protect democracy? And then none of the promises got put forward, right? Like, that's one of the main questions that are out there right now. And a lot of people keep talking about, like, well, we can't let the fascists win because we're going to descend into fascism or further into fascism. And it's like, what do you think McCarthyism was?
Yeah.
What do you think the Patriot Act was? Like, what do you think Operation Paperclip was when we actually took Nazi scientists, saved them from the Nuremberg trials, brought them over here and put them to work in NASA, right? Because, like, we beat the Soviets to get into the space by taking Nazi rocket engineers, building a spaceship out of a Nazi rocket, and then launching it on the moon. So America, for the past 7 years, right? Anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, just Google the name Van Braun NASA. You know what I'm talking about. America, since the 1950s at least, has partnered with fascism against socialism. And that's really where kind of like the McCarthyism gets a lot of its steam, is we will join who ostensibly we think are the worst people in the world against socialists and communists. And because Americans are very flimsy with definitions, socialists and communists can be just about anything, right? It's one of the reasons that they went after the Black Panther Party so hard, is they were openly socialist. They were openly, in today's language, intersectional, right? Is they recognized that there is uniformity to the struggles that people have all over the world. And, you know, they were an early group to like recognize the Palestinian struggle. They, the Panthers were real quick to be like, it doesn't matter if you're gay or lesbian. We're fighting for you too, right? They were very in tune with the idea that no one's free till everyone's free. And if your political ideology is based on denying these types of freedom to other people because you have adapted your version of Americanism or whatever to fascism, then of course that's going to be one of your big targets. You know, I'm sure you know, we could do hours on COINTELPRO, right? And all of the efforts to infiltrate, you know, Black groups, Muslim groups, any group in the nation that didn't fit into the narrow box of what was considered politically acceptable. You know, and once you start unpacking all of that, like, yes, what's happening today is scary, but it's not new, right? It's just been following the same blueprint. Sure, it's intensified over the years, it's amplified, absolutely, but you know, what was Public Enemy singing about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Their first joint.
Fight the power. Fight the power. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Kind of random, but not really. What's the difference between the democracy and the republic?
Who's represented? Especially if we're talking about like a radical democracy or like a pure democracy, right? That this is everyone has a certain amount of input. Like if you democratize your workplace, the janitor tells you when you need to order new soap. The manager doesn't decide when they do or they don't, right? If you're working at a cashier at the local grocery market, you're voting on the policies that determine what that, right? Democracy is an attempt to give everyone as much agency as possible. Whereas a republic is these people are the best informed about your situation. They will help make the rules for you. Plato's Republic is a really good kind of example of this, in that the idea is there are some people who just shouldn't be trusted to make decisions. And a pure democracy does, I'm gonna go off code for a minute. It sounds awful. I don't want to go to every school board meeting. I don't want to go vote on which days they come and sweep the streets, right? I don't want to make every single decision that affects my life. There are some things where, we don't even realize there are people making these decisions. And a lot of that is because we are so incredibly divorced from power. We're disenfranchised just as a society. Just to go back to the idea that, like, democracy, who has it and who hasn't it existed for? Voting in this country at first was tied to property ownership and your genitals, right? Mm-hmm. You got to own land, you got to be male. Mm-hmm. And
got to be white.
That's
got to be white male.
You got to be white male. And then once you go through the Emancipation Proclamation, now we got to change the rules, because now there's more people owning property. We have to find new ways to disenfranchise people. You get women voting. There's all sorts of arguments between early Black liberation and early feminist leaders, because they were partners for a long time. Mm-hmm. Abolition movement was largely carried by women, right? Just like a lot of liberation movements tend to be carried by women. And you get this friction because you go back to the divide and conquer. Well, one of you gets the right to vote, one of you doesn't, right? One of you gets suffrage. And this question of representation in an American sense has never really existed. We've always been much more of a republic. And even then, we've got a more narrow view of what a republic is. I don't know if that answered the question or made more.
No, it answered the question. But I have another question in regards to that, is that, we call this a democracy. So at what level does democracy play? Like, at what level does your vote count and not count?
Let me just ask a quick aside. Have you ever felt like your vote counted?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start with that.
Vote for what, though?
That's the next question. At what level? Are we talking like county treasurer, or are we talking president?
So being here in Florida,
mm-hmm.
right, I felt like my vote counted, though it's a quote unquote red state, mm-hmm. right? I feel like voting here, blue, right, would push back against. If I was in Jersey, no, because everybody's voting blue, by and large. In New York, everybody's voting blue, by and large, right? In terms of who wins what districts, all that's pretty much predetermined going into it, right?
And what predetermines that?
Gerrymandering.
Yeah.
How districts are drawn up, populations, centers of populations, like where populations are centered versus here versus there. Mm-hmm. Also you can throw in, the Electoral College, and you can throw in the way how many senators each state has. You can throw in a lot of things that counterbalance it, right? But and I tell people I'm the conspiracy theory Don Dada. Like all the conspiracy theories from 1989 all the way up until whenever David Icke, all of your conspiracy, all I did, Behold the Pale Horse, Trilateral Commission, Illuminati 666, Rule by Secrecy, Conspirators Hierarchy, all them joints. I was down with Alex Jones, all that shit, all that bullshit. Right? And then, fuck the Clintons, fuck the Democrats, hard body. I didn't vote for Obama twice. They're going to use the black man to usher in the Illuminati. That's how they're going to get us. They're going to force everybody on health care. But in order to get the health care, you got to get the chip. That's how they're going to get motherfuckers. My mother and my now wife was like, you're bugging. You need some insurance. You run around here 40-something years old. Some shit go wrong. You're going to be fucked up in the game. Go get yourself some insurance. So I listened, signed up for Obamacare. 3 months later, broke my wrist. Had to have 3 different surgeries, reconstructive surgery of the hand and wrist. Thank God for Obamacare.
At the time I was working in a hospital. I'm working nights because I'm going to school in the day, been teaching in the evening. I'm sleeping like 2 hours a day if I'm lucky, right? And I'm doing like audits at this hospital. And because I'm doing audits, I'm working very closely with the registrars and the folks who I think they call them insurance coordinators, the people who would, if you didn't have insurance, they'd run up and talk to you to figure out how you're going to pay. Right? Because even as a nonprofit, we're extracting your resources for care. Yes. And I can't even tell you the number of people. This is in Indianapolis, right? Very, very red state. And because I'm at a university hospital, it's not necessarily the locals who are here getting treatment, right? If you're from anywhere in the state, you need surgery, you got cancer, you're coming to the university hospital in the capital. And I can't even begin to tell you the number of like rural folk who got no insurance. They're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in cancer treatment. They're breaking down because they're like, this will ruin my family. But like, I can't sign up for the Obamacare. And they're looking at it, they're like, you've got generational debt ahead of you. Or you can just sign up for the Affordable Care Act, get something that'll at least cover 60, 70, 80% of your treatment. Right. And a $20,000 bill is a lot better than a $100,000 bill. Right. And, this speaks to just how much we're propagandized. Right. And as Americans, we're some of the most propagandized people on the planet. I know we would love to say it's North Korea. We'd love to say it's Russia. It by far.
It's so much better. It's so much better at it, too. Oh, my God. It's a science here with the propaganda.
Like, they don't even have to try at this point. It's so bad. We fight against our own best interests. One of the things that really just grabbed my brain and broke it in half when it came to this was COVID. And arguing with folk about like the most basic things where it's like you tell them like, hey, look, you just cover your mouth.
That's it.
We can get through this if you just stop drinking everyone's spit, my guy. And they're out here like coughing on each other to prove it's not real. And they're like, well, vaccines are the worst thing ever. And like, look, okay, you don't want to get vaccinated.
That's cool. Fine. Don't get a vaccine. Cover like, your face, wear face masks. All right. Just the bare minimum to keep each other safe. People wouldn't do it. And
where I'm going with this, right? Just to give you the end result, I'm going to literacy. That's where this is going to end up. And it's an information literacy problem. But like, you've got people who it's not their fault that they're a victim of the programming, right? You don't blame the victim, you deprogram the victim. And of course, they're victims of programming because massive cuts to education. And on top of that, you've got the propagandized education, but like still, you can learn a lot from public school. I'm not knocking it. You've got these people who are taking in all of the worst information. It lowers the bar for what's true and what's not. The death of truth, not just in a philosophical postmodern sense, but like Trump coming out and being like, well, that's an alternative fact. Both of these things can be true, even though they're mutually exclusive. I like this truth is more convenient to me. I'm going to accept this one. And you got people being like, oh, you know what? This validates what I already believe, or it validates something that's convenient. It's very simple. One of the reasons that a lot of conservative folk disliked Obama is they said he was a liar. They said he was lying, not just because of his skin color, although that did work against him because this is America, but he gave nuanced answers. Trump just gives you yes or no. It's simple. People like simple answers, especially when you're trained that people who give you a lot of nuance, they're either lying, they're making it up as they go, or they're waffling. They don't really know the answer. Right? Whereas there's not a whole lot that's yes, no. Like binaries don't cover most situations you're going to encounter in life. There's always some wild card in there. There's always something else that matters. Unless we're talking about something that's low stakes. Are you hungry? Yeah, I could eat. Right. Okay, whatever. But like, if we're talking about national health, yeah, throw some nuance on that. Give me some more details. And what you have is a group of people who are inherently suspicious because they've been lied to. They've been propagandized. They don't know who to trust. All right, we can accept all of that. You now have the problem that they don't know where to go to get answers. So they go to the person who gives them the answer they want.
Yeah.
And that is, we're not even to the point of debating critical thinking. We're not even to the point of debating thinking. We're talking basic literacy. Just the ability to take information and say, okay, this is a little suspect or not. And people have been conditioned to make that distinction based on ideology, not on the veracity of the information. Right? So it's not a coincidence that if you tend to vote blue, you have this certain set of beliefs. If you vote red, you have this set of beliefs. Not because you lean towards one or the other, but because you're so heavily conditioned that you have this word association thing. Yep. This word is this response. This word is this response. And that is the kind of fundamental problem that we're up against. And COVID really spelled out how dire that situation was for me. I didn't realize how deeply we were programmed just as a nation, as a populace. That really highlighted it for me.
Yeah. One of the things that highlighted it for me was a joke earlier in our conversation was flat earth.
Yeah.
And how many people were actually, standing on that and willing to debate it at, to the ends of the earth. It's like, yo, what's going on here? Like, and then that happened. Like Trump was elected not much later as the first person who came to me with flat earth. And the dumbing down. I saw a post early. Actually, I reposted it about someone who I guess was a wrestler and talked about how the most interesting thing he had seen as a professional wrestler was the fact that there was another wrestler who nobody cheered for. So there was a applause track that they would pump into the audience to make people then react a certain way to whatever wrestler. And he said that's when it hit him that, people will just go along with whatever you tell them, regardless of how they truly feel about a thing. And we see that with Donald Trump, who as well is a product of the WWE. Tapping into that audience, that crowd, building his character up, of course, with the TV show, The Apprentice. His whole kind of, character has been created over the last 40, 50 years as him being this thing in order to step him into the presidency, it seems.
Yeah, had you told me that years ago, I'd have been like, nah, that's ridiculous. There was a Rage Against the Machine video, Sleep Now in the Fire. It's like 20 years ago now. At the end, there's a guy with a Donald Trump for president sign out on the streets. He's just hanging out. Because that you film on the streets, you end up filming the people on the streets.
Right.
And I still don't know if he expected to win in 16 or not. It felt like a long shot back then. Right. Like if you'd have asked me in 2014 who's got the best chance, I'd have been like, Jeb Bush is looking strong. You know, Democrats, they struggle to get it together, especially during presidential elections. Yeah.
So when he announced that he was going to run for president, one of the races he didn't actually run for president, but he said he was going to. I want to say Bill Cosby was on The View. And I think Barbara Walters, I think I got this right. If I'm wrong, excuse me. But Barbara Walters had asked him his thoughts on Donald Trump. And Bill Cosby was like, oh, he's a big bag of air. He's a windbag. He talks. If you're going to run for president, just shut up and run for president. Why? Like Bill was getting at Trump. Mm-hmm. They asked Trump about it. So, Bill Cosby said X, Y, Z, which he's like, oh, man, that's unfortunate. Bill Cosby was a friend of mine. He's like, I told you we're friends. Oh, okay. And about a year later, all these problems came for Bill. And then so when he came down the escalator and he said that whole thing, and if I shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, I wouldn't lose any support. Mm-hmm. And because I had gone through the conspiracy theory circles, because I had gone through, I was networking with, people who would consider themselves on the maybe not far right, but way over there, mm-hmm. Right? And I understood where their frame of where they were coming from. There, I'm like, yo, man, I wouldn't be surprised if he won. Mm-hmm. I could see that Hillary Clinton and like jokers really don't mess with the Clintons like that.
Right.
They don't, Bill's 8 years was crazy. After 12 years of Reagan and Bush, have a Democrat, the country at large wasn't really rocking with it. But however, I know y'all, you and somebody else on the comment section said that the presidential election is not chosen, it's pre-selected. So if it's all pre-selected, which I'm not saying it's not, mm-hmm. I don't know if it is, but if it is, then it makes sense that he's the president. And it makes sense that all the conspiracy theories that they threw on the left, mm-hmm. they're the ones actually making it a reality. From mm-hmm. Peter Thiel and Palantir to Elon Musk to the tech bros, that whole and the just data collection, surveillance, all the big brother, all that's coming into play by way of the very people who decried it for it, was the watchdogs for it. And even the pedophilia stuff is crazy because it's like, I thought he was here to clean up the deep state and Pizzagate and all that other, and here they are knee deep in all the bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, like, to call it projection undersells it, right? I would say more than just projection, right? Because projection, if we go back to psychoanalysis, is like a subconscious thing. These are things that I don't actually dislike about myself that I'm going to just accuse you of, right? Like that person with the wandering eye who's always accusing their partner of cheating, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas stop me if I give them too much credit, because I don't actually think Trump is very smart. But like, he does have some intelligent people around him, and they know what they're doing. They know that it's wrong, and they know that people have strong reactions to it. So they're not so much projecting as controlling a narrative. They're saying, these people are doing it, and because I'm accusing you, I'm kind of implicitly innocent of it. But I can say, yeah, there's a Pizzagate, which is a ridiculous story on its face, right? Like you break it down and you try to explain it back to someone. You're like, yeah, so there's this pizza shop, right? And there's like a bunch of pedophiles in the basement, and they go do pedophilia stuff. And like the Clintons are hanging out down there. And it's only Democrats. We got Matt Gaetz. I don't know if you read the report that was released. It proves everything except the child trafficking. Right. The screwing around with minors in there. Moving minors across state lines and having sex with them in other states. It's in there. They just don't call it trafficking.
Crazy.
Anyone who's interested in that can download it for free, by the way. It's a government document. I think it was like 40, 50 pages, but it's PDF, easily searchable, and
PDF, right?
And like jokes write itself at that point.
You're right.
And of course, they didn't try him criminally.
No.
In terms of like presidential races and even like senatorial and congressional races being predetermined, it's actually not even as nefarious as it sounds in terms of like conspiracy theories, because the more money you have, the easier it is for you to run a race. The more embedded you are in the establishment of either party, right, in terms of like an aristocratic system, the more likely you are to be uncontested. The more likely you are to get that big PAC money. So like, we live in a country where bribery is legal, for example. Right, like those types of gifts, you know, you can make donations, you can do all sorts of things that sound like they should be illegal. You can give a lot of money to political candidates. Sometimes you have to make sure they don't know whose name is on the check publicly. But
did you ever watch the series The Ozarks?
I haven't watched it. No.
Jason Bateman.
Mhm.
Oh my God, it's incredible! Like it is incredible. Just to give you just a short little, so it's this accountant. Jason Bateman's character is an accountant, right? He does the numbers. I think he and his partner, they have their own company, what have you, and they end up in the midst of these Mexican drug lords business, right? Now I don't want to tell you the details and get it all twisted, but to save his own life, he agrees to basically, you know, wash all this drug money that's coming through. And so they go out to the Ozarks because, you know, it's a lot of real estate. They could flip properties. So there, you know, they got the poppy fields going. It's crazy right there, right? And the corruption in that part of town, in the state of Missouri, and you get into all of that, how people are bought and sold, from the politicians to the, you know, the nonprofits to the corporations, to everybody's in bed trying to cover up dirt. And the more dirt you try to cover up, the more dirt you got to do to cover up. So it just goes on and on and on. But to me, it's one of the best series I've ever seen. I would say it's up there with The Sopranos. I'm not gonna say it's better than The Sopranos, but it's a good one. Ozarks. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it.
I'll make sure that that's on the rotation coming up.
Yeah, you're gonna like that one. Yeah, man, this has been a dope conversation, bro. You know, we got a lot of people in the building that shouted us out. Reptile Sam said, "What's up?"
Oh yeah, hey Sam, what's good?
Yeah, my boy Ramageddon tapped in. I see activity on the YouTube, Facebook, the IG. JTXP chimed in on IG. What up, what up, what up? Everybody out there, I appreciate you guys for tapping in. This is actually the first installment of the Hakim Green Show. So, you know, you've seen me throughout the years. I got this thing going on, and this thing going on, and that thing going on. Don't forget about 24 Hours of Peace, Love, Unity, Safely Having Fun, going down on September 5th and September 6th in the great city of Newark, New Jersey, 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Saturday. The lineup is 666. We're going to be streaming live and direct from all platforms, Hakim Green on IG, Facebook, everywhere. It's going to be lit. So if you can't make it to Newark, tap in with your boy online. Jeff, it's been a pleasure, bro. Yeah, I really appreciate you hopping on this first installment. It's gonna be many, many more. I'm gonna have you back on. I've been wanting to get you on one of these things for a minute, because your wealth of knowledge is appreciative on my page. And like I said, we're usually on the same side of the conversation when these debates go down on Facebook or whatever. But I appreciate your follow, appreciate your support, my bro. and salute.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, y'all. I think that's about it. Hakim Green Show. We out. Peace.